Earn 5 points per dollar.
Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to the Minutes with Milo show. It's It's another Monday edition. Yes, yes, yes. It is Monday once again. We are on the week. We're hounding on its trail. We're going to whip it. We're going to get it good. Da 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 da. Da da da. Whip it good. Maybe. It might whip us. I don't know. It remains to be seen. So, only time will tell. If you're watching it for the first time, leave me a comment, like, subscribe, turn the notification bell on because you don't want to miss a minute of any of this stuff that I'm putting down, brother. Woo! So, last week, there's Roberto. Last week, Clell called me out. Said, let's do chemtrails next week. I said, why not do chemtrails next week? Now, when you say do chemtrails, I'm not talking about you lay out some mirror or plastic sheeting on the ground and you lay a line of powdery stuff out and you do it up your nose. No. When I say let's do chemtrails, that means let's do a topic about the so-called chemtrails. I like my little antler quotes. My little antler quotes. Why do I do that? Isn't that what you do when it's just like, this is what somebody's calling them? There he is. GTG. Huh? What is GTG? Hello, everyone. Who is GTG? That's not Roberta, or that's not Clayle. GTG. Man, do I know any GTGs? I don't know. I know some GTs. Gran Turismo. Is that Gran Turismo guy? It's me. It's me. It's Ernest T. Ernest T. Bass. Is that Clayle? Got to go. Where are you going, Robert? You just got here. Smell you later. Anyway, chemtrails. You do this because that's not the real name. That's not what everybody calls them. Except if you believe there's chemicals in them. Most people call them contrails, short for condensation trails. So what are we talking about? If you saw my little thumbnail, changed my ID, weird stuff on here lately. Well, look where you come every Monday and Thursday. I mean, what do you expect? Weirdness is going on. You seen the chemtrail on the way home? Well, you see them all the time. So, condensation trail, Knife the Gara. Oh, what the? All right, you say so. You got to tell me what a Garthok is, though. So, what are they? If you looked at my thumbnail, it didn't give you a clue. But they are the streaks that you see in the sky when a high-flying jet plane, mostly commercial, I would assume, because that's what you see in the sky most all the time, zips across the sky, and they're just really pencil thin right at the end of the plane. And then he goes away, and as he goes away, they get bigger and they bigger and they bigger and they bigger. So, ever seen Coneheads? Yeah. Okay. They were Garthoks or Garthics? Yeah. I don't know. Are you gonna run around with like a ring on your head, going crazy? Sometimes they're cool looking, yeah. So that's what the contrails, chemtrails are. Is the trails that are left on the through the atmosphere as a jet airplane, mostly commercial, fly across through there, and they get bigger because they're dispersing over time. So we'll look at the definition of contrail, but basically it's the jet engine. Of course, it's burning fuel. It's hot. It's blowing hot air out the back. It mixes with the cold air of the upper atmosphere, and I can't explain it. It makes crystals, ice crystals. And they just kind of go out the back, are created out the back, and as the plane flies along, it leaves a trail of these crystal crumbs, whatever you want to call it. And then as time goes on, of course, they're not concentrated anymore. They start to disperse in the atmosphere, and eventually they melt or whatever, or disperse far enough and you can't see them. All right? Yeah. Very hot exhaust, very cold temperatures, condensation, and it freezes. Or that's what I've heard. Maybe it's just like a cloud, right? Maybe it's just like clouds. And if one flies through the other one close enough or whatever, you can kind of see that it disperses. Now, if you've ever seen Top Gun, the way they dip and turn and the way they bank into the curves, you'll see contrails coming off the tips of their wings, the fighter jets. And that's just another atmospheric condition from flying in, moist air, and it makes those trails. Instead of coming off the engine, they're coming off the wingtips. And that's what the scientists say, explanations say, that they're just condensation trails. It's just a fact of nature. Now, does every plane leave them as they going through the air? I don't think so. Do they? Sometimes you'll see them, they'll stop and they'll go. They'll stop and they'll go. I'm getting there, corn thug. Whatever. I got to read that again, so I don't know what to call you. Is the G silent? Gnarfy? Gnarful? The Garthok? Gnarfily? Anyway. Okay, so the G is silent, even though it's spelled with a G. It's not a knife. It's a knife. I don't know what to call you. So that's what the explanation is. Now, chemtrails come from the idea that the government has a plan. And after it, I did a little research. It's either the government or the very rich or some combination of the two that are, I guess maybe there's a couple of ways to put it. Somehow they're either mixing chemicals in as they come, as the exhaust comes out of the engine, they're mixing chemicals in, so it's just mixed into the air, and therefore there's chemicals in the trails, or the trail itself is actually sprayed out of the aircraft somehow, and that's what's left in the atmosphere that you see. Okay? So somehow certain people say on my show, certain people would say that all in that white streaks, whatever it might be, whether it's ice crystals or clouds or just straight up chemicals, they're things that the government, rich people, people that have the power that be, are spraying the entire earth with chemicals to do whatever the sinister end might be. Now, nobody believes, nobody talks about this, nobody thinks that they're spraying these chemicals to increase your longevity, make you more healthy, or make you more fit, or make you superhuman, or make your brain work 100%. It's never good. And of course, the government, they may say it's for your good, your own good, or trying to better, the people's lives and things like that. Oh, just wait, it'll get better. That's what the government does. Okay, so it's never good. It's almost like everybody wants to be a superhero, but the body never reacts favorably to radiation or overexposure to anything, or special medications and all this other kind of stuff. Superhero special powers just don't happen because the body reacts negatively to almost everything. So whatever the government does is not usually the best for us. So they're jumping in here already. The government would never. No, it would never. They always have our best interest. Yes, they do, Roberto. Geoengineering, says Garthog. Uh, Wait a minute. Where'd my mouse go? I think it's gotten killed by the chemtrail. Is it Narfle? 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 Yeah, Narfle. That's what we're going to call it. Narfle. Narfle. Anyway, Narfle says geoengineering, whether it's sterilization, reduction of life expectancy, mind control, or weather control. Now, weather control is already a thing. All right. So the Chinese, I don't remember what Olympics it was. It was Summer Olympics, I believe. They seeded clouds prior to the start of the Olympics so that then it would rain before the Olympics and they would have clear weather. The Chinese, maybe other countries, have successfully seeded clouds to make it rain. Not necessarily just out of the blue, thin air, but the conditions have to be right. It has to be, already favorable for that. And then they can make it rain. So if they're trying to control the weather, then, maybe that's it. But there have been instances where certain governments, maybe not necessarily our own, have used airplanes in experiments and sprayed things over the general population without their knowledge. I know it's hard to believe, but they've done it with, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't mean for that to happen. But, we did mean for this, we tried to figure this out, but this happened instead, so oopsie, sorry. But we'll look at some of that. What was I going to look up? Oh, yeah. Let's see. If I'm right. China has developed a powerful weather modification network. It's more than twice the size of Texas. To bring much needed rain to the Tibetan Plateau, according to the new scientist, the machine works by seeding clouds with silver iodine particles that trigger them to release moisture. All right? So, they are doing it. They are modifying the atmosphere in a way to make it rain. Will they ever get it to rain meatballs and spaghetti? I don't think so. Even though at one point WKRP got it to rain turkeys, and that's a very funny episode of WKRP in Cincinnati that I recommend for anybody to watch. Yes, Roberto, it was in England that they did one of those things. True story. Absolutely. Now, has our government been caught doing things to the public without their knowledge? And then it's like, well, okay. We did do that, but you weren't supposed to know about it. LSD, all this other kind of stuff. True facts. Okay? So, mind control, not hypnotizing, but brainwashing people. Lots and lots and lots of things happened after World War I, II, Vietnam, 60s, late 50s, 40s, 30s, when they were just like, we're the government, we'll do it anyway. Yeah. But back to chemtrails. So some people call them chemtrails because they're trails of chemicals. Now, they've done a lot of work, a lot of research, and they make it sound good, like a lot of conspiracies. Do I know it's true or false? No. But when they say, oh, well, they crisscross America to cover, the whole land. And I'm just going to use America because I don't know what other happens over in England or other parts of the world, okay? But yeah, so do commercial aircrafts. They crisscross America constantly, all the time. Now, if they were releasing things into the atmosphere, would it blanket the U.S.? More than likely. Just because there's very few places that never sees an airplane in the sky. So now if you were in Wyoming, Big Sur, I don't know, one of these, places where there's not large cities around and it's not in direct line with another city, then maybe, it would crisscross and you could be in the middle and you would never, But if they were going to spray everybody and try to get everybody to be sterile or less male or more female or less female, or to get dumber, to try to get smarter, to make you lazy, to make you more suicidal, whatever it might be, they would want to cover, of course, the highly populated areas, right? You get more bang for your buck. But that's where the airplanes fly. And that's why it makes sense both ways. It makes sense with, like, if they were spraying chemicals, then they want to be over cities. Well, there's a lot of air traffic there. You're going to see a lot of condensation trails in the sky because that's where aircraft are. Doesn't mean anything nefarious. Big word. Nefarious is going on. Or is it? That's the question. So, like with a lot of conspiracies, what I think about, I've always said, and maybe not on the show, but I'm pretty sure I have somewhere, a secret is not a secret if you tell one other person. I don't care who that other person is. Well, okay, I take that back. I do care. If you have a secret and you whisper it to your infant, then it's probably going to stay a secret. So, like, if you pick up little Johnny and you go, little Johnny, Roberto's not your daddy. Okay, don't tell nobody. It could still be a secret. All right? Unless Roberto has wired the kid so he can listen to all the things that you whisper to it, it's probably still going to remain a secret. But once people get old enough to repeat and understand what you've said, you tell one person, it's no longer a secret. All right. So my theory on conspiracy is, how big of a group would you have to compromise to keep this a secret. So, is every plane, let's just say that it's true. We're putting chemicals into the air that's going to make men less aggressive. So let's just say that's the government's thought is like, man, we can take over these people. We got to keep these dudes calm. We don't want them being all aggressive and caveman type, right? So, just the military, Robert says. So, how many people is it? Maybe it's not every commercial flight. Maybe it's just certain flights, certain areas. Maybe they've got a plan to do this area, then this area, and the next area. Start out small. It's always start small. Work your way up. See if you get caught. What is it? Shoplifting, piece of gum. Next thing's a candy bar. Well, I got away with that. Then a soda pop. Man, I got rid of that. Let's try a 2-liter or a 6-pack. Let's work our way up to, carrying out the big screen TV. So, how many people would you have to compromise to make that happen? Would the pilot have to know? Somebody's got to activate it. Maybe it's on a timer. Ground crew for sure. Ground crew. Maybe you could get it done with 3 guys. But who's going to... Oh, look, he's been gone. All this time, all my knowledge, I've been spreading on the internet waves, and he hasn't been receiving it. Anyway, maybe you could do it with 2 or 3 guys on the ground crew. But if you're going to make this happen, there's got to be a huge, unless it's very concentrated chemicals, a huge amount. Oh, did you? Man, I'm telling you what. You got booty. I don't want to know. Let's see. People, I don't ignore my phone. My wife's already mad at me because I ignored my phone earlier and the dog needed to go out. So she's mad at me. Okay. So he got booted off the internet. You have BTES? I rebooted my router Sunday morning because it was all hicky. Seems like Sundays must be the time they do maintenance. I don't know. But anyway, it got hicky. Hinky. Sketchy. Robert says he's sleeping on the couch tonight. That's what he means by getting booted. Okay, he's got Spectrum. Anyway, so I rebooted it thinking that was going to help it. It never came back. I had to go. Okay, so, a side note. Anytime you ever talk to the internet guys at your provider, well, if you turned your router off for at least 30 seconds to 2 minutes. So I left it off. And I went and did something. I came back. I turned it back on. Apparently, I left it off too long. It never came back. So then I just went in, unplugged it, plugged it back in, went back, sit back down, come right back up. Anyway. Ground crew. Unless it's a highly concentrated type chemical that this is going to happen, you're going to have more than just a gallon of it. Okay? So, there's got to be a tank to hold it. There has to be a mechanism to release it. And, you see what I'm saying? And if it's just one jet out of 10,000, it ain't going to happen. If it's one jet out of every 100 special jets that they're just literally doing it, everybody in the whole thing's, and people will say, here's one thing. Pilot doesn't know what's in it. Okay? Doesn't know what's in it. He's just told, do your orders, fly this way, don't ask questions of the ground crew, and everything will be A-okay. All right? So, maybe that's all true. But sooner or later, the pilot's going to say, you know what? I'm getting paid an extra $10,000 per flight to keep my mouth shut. What am I keeping my mouth shut about? It's going to get out. It's going to get out. Or the ground crew. if they decide, well, you know what, man, I'm tired of doing this. I'm just quitting. Were they going to kill him? Maybe. You know, but that's my idea with conspiracies. How many people have to get together and agree upon this to make this happen? You know? So, if you boil it down, potentially, you could pull something off like this if there were, 100 guys doing it, top to bottom. You know, you have to have pilots. You have to have a commercial license. You have to have commercial airplanes. You have to have all those kind of things. Otherwise, if you're flying some kind of hokey, fake commercial airplane, that means you got to have all the traffic controllers in on it. Oh, don't say anything about that airplane. That's one of them special airplanes. So let's look at some of these conspiracy things and see what you think. Where are you? Come on, buddy. There we go. Get that up there. Let's hide my telephone number. All right. So this is from CNN.com. The truth behind those white streaks trailing behind jets in the sky. Right there it says it all. This is the truth of it. They tell you right up front that they are telling you the truth. Now, sometimes I think the more they say it's the truth, the more I'm apt to believe it's not. All right? When you see all those white streaks trailing behind jets creating stripes against the blue sky, the lines are called contrails, short for condensation trails, and they appear when water vapor condenses and freezes around the exhaust of an aircraft, according to the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research. Why would you call your place the University Corporation? At least that's what science says. In recent years, a growing number of people believe that these contrails are actually chemtrails, a well-established conspiracy theory asserting that these trails aren't made from condensation at all, but are instead chemicals being sprayed by the government. Though the theory may sound far-fetched to some, chemtrails have become a common conspiracy both in the U.S. and around the world, despite evidence to the contrails. See what I did there? The contrary. The chemtrails idea has been around since 1996. Why? Well, they're getting ready to tell you. And it's largely rooted in an Air Force research paper from the same year, Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. It outlines a future weather modification system to achieve military objectives. Okay, so the Chinese are doing it, but they'll never say it was because of the Olympics. It was because they want to make that plateau green. They just want to make it rain to better their people. All right. It outlines a future weather modification to military objectives using aerospace forces and does not reflect current military policy, practice, or capabilities, the Environmental Protection Agency has stated. Well, see, there you go. The EPA is backing up the claims by CNN that it's all malarkey. Don't blame me if you're not at work tomorrow. It's the chemtrails finally got a hold of it. At the most basic, chemtrails conspiracy theory posits that contrails are not created by water vapor at all, but instead are a sign that the government, the wealthy, or some mix of the two, is secretly secreting toxic chemicals into the air, creating the white lines. Ideas about the purpose of these supposedly toxic chemicals vary. Some believe the chemicals are being used to poison humanity, others say it's for mind control, and some think it's a way for the government to control the weather. So, I talked with Craig, and Craig suggested that it is infertility. Or he's the one that suggested to me that it was Make guys less guily, guily, less manly, less aggressive. I don't know if that's going to work because there's a lot of violence still going on. Maybe they haven't got the mixture just right yet. Okay? So how did this get going? During the Cold War, here we go, Robert. During the Cold War, the British government conducted more than 750 mock chemical warfare attacks on the general public. Now, did the general public get notified that this was happening? I don't think so. According to researchers, this subjected hundreds of thousands of people to zinc cadmium sulfide, a chemical chosen due to its small size, it's similar to that of a germ, and it glows in the dark under ultraviolet light, making it easy to trace. The chemical was thought to be non-toxic at the time, though repeated exposure could be cancerous. The U.S. did the same thing in the 1950s and 60s, using the chemical as a tracer to test the dispersion of biological weapons. Now, some people would say, aha! There's proof. Could they do it? Sure. How are they going to do it? Not so sure. Bolo for any nondescript vape that may or may not be following you in the morning. So, use the word vape. I have a conspiracy theory that maybe I'll have a show on, that there's certain, let's say, nefarious individuals that form a government that are potentially killing us 1 second at a time over the course of decades. That's all I'm going to say. Okay? Though these tests were decades ago, the theory has flourished, so much so that in 2016 the EPA published a 14-page document explaining contrails, outlining the chemicals used by the Air Force, and attempting to dispute the conspiracy. Some would say, methinks they protest too much, meaning the more they say it's bull, the more people will believe. And the more they say I'm going to hold my breath until you believe me, the more people are going to believe it. In 2021, a Facebook post went viral claiming that the President Joe Biden manipulated the weather through chemtrails and caused Texas's week-long deep freeze in that February that hundreds of people engaging with the message. All right. So somebody's believing what Joe Biden said or making up things. Joe Biden manipulated weather. On X, thousands of people, and that's formerly Twitter, on X, thousands of people follow accounts dedicated to tracking and posting proof of these chemtrails. One 2017 study, which had a nationally representative sample of 1,000 people, 1,000 of us, found that about 10% of Americans believe the conspiracy completely, while upwards of 30% of Americans at least found it somewhat true. I don't think I find it somewhat true. I think I find it possible. Is it possible that the government has alien technology and is trying to backwards engineer it right now? Some dude right now is not sitting at his computer doing a second B-rated show on the internet. He's trying to back engineer how this thing floats in midair with no power from anywhere else. Is that possible? Well, yeah, it's possible. If I believe it's really true, I don't know. I haven't made up my mind. So, 30% of Americans that found it somewhat true. Is there lines across the sky? That is true. Do I know personally what they're made out of? No. So there could be lots of things in there. Now, taking into the chemical factors that it's not just pure nice exhaust coming out those engines. So in those ice crystals, I don't know what's in them. Burnt fuel for sure. Positive, because they don't burn 100% of their fuel. And they're burning some really rugged stuff in the kerosene diesel fuel range. So, yeah, Roberts, do they dump fuel? Remind me of that. We'll look at it, because I know you'd said that today. So, belief in conspiracies is often traced back to the skepticism of authority figures, and social media has had a role in magnifying the problem. Social media's algorithm structure means people see information that reinforces their existing beliefs. Ex-believers interviewed attributed to their ongoing belief in the part of the sheer amount of pro-conspiracy information on their social media feed. A professor at UC Berkeley studies social psychology who was also involved in the study was Zhao. Scientific evidence debunking the theory simply wouldn't make it onto their feeds or in their social groups. Even if it did, other believers would only reinforce the theory. So some believers told us the power of the conspiracy is that it can be adjusted to fit in any new information, since the smoking gun evidence never seems to come around. For example, even if believers are not sure that the so-called chemtrails are actually being used for population control, the narrative can easily shift to weather manipulation and climate change without requiring any new information or evidence. True. That's true. It's kind of like, you know, what can you use a ball for? You can use a ball for lots of things. So, depending on who's handling it and who's making up the story, it can mean different things. And it's easy to say, well, okay, if you don't believe it means that, then it means this. Because you just still just have the same ball. They're just saying, well, okay, if you don't believe that it's, used for, bouncing up and down and shooting into hoops, then you know what it's used for? It's used for kicking with your feet and getting it into a square net. It's still a ball. So that's what they're saying. It's so easy to say, all right, well, it's weather manipulation then. They're trying to combat and or increase. So am I back on there? Because I just got a message that OBS Studio was lost connection, and now it is reconnected successfully. So am I back on the air? Roberto Nefarli? Okay, here we go. I never left. Well, according to this, OBS Studio sent me a thing, and when I looked, it said disconnected on my stream. Now it says I'm live again. So maybe we've tripped a couple of triggers here, people. You never know. Oh no, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. What's that outside my window? Is that a helicopter coming? Am I getting swatted? If you don't know what swatted is, that means that somebody nefariously calls the police department and they send a SWAT team to your house thinking that you're, kidnapping somebody or holding somebody for ransom. It's the government. Oh, the printers and alarms are going off somewhere. That's right. Some CIA dudes tuning into my feed. So anyway. So chemtrails have the most interesting conspiracy because it's right in front of our face and we still choose to ignore it. Though the theory may seem silly to some, the underlying concerns of the believers come from legitimate societal and environmental issues that warrant attention. Distrust in the government, concerns about environmental issues, or even struggles with chronic illness can all lead to the credibility of chemtrails theory, suggesting that something else is causing these social issues. So, scientists have said there is no evidence for the existence of chemtrails. Even if there was a government conspiracy at work in aircraft contrails, Such a large-scale program would be difficult to cover up given the amount of people who would be necessary for the operation, Harvard researchers noted. I'm not even a Harvard researcher, and that's what these theories have always boiled down to me. How many people would you have to compromise? How many people would you have to keep under your thumb to make this and keep this a secret? And Nafar, if you see a blouse or a shirt that you like, let me know and click on it, Forever Spin. We'll get it shipped out to you. How's that? But with any good conspiracy, it's easy to say, well, guess what? The government's in on it. The EPA's got to be in on it. If the EPA's in on it, then there's scientists that are in on it. And if scientists are in on it, then, scientists at Harvard are in on it. It only takes one dude to write a paper to say, hey, you know what? I'm a smart dude, and this is a bunch of bull crap. And everybody, oh, well, God, he's a smart dude, and he says it's a bunch of bull crap. Or what you do is when it gets too big, you just say, look, there's an alien. Or we could have aliens. Who knows? Let me release these papers that have been kept secret for, 57.5 years, and you decide if there's aliens or not. And then everybody goes, it's the squirrel syndrome. Squirrel! And they forget about the other stuff. They forget about the contrails, and they forget about the, I wish I could remember what that was, and I read the book on it. How about the LSD experiments and the mind control and all that kind of stuff? All right, so chemtrails, contrails, conspiracy trails, all that kind of stuff. All right, so here's one of the things that I was researching to try to figure out, and the only thing I came up with, what happened to this? This guy here. Okay, so back when I was reading through the CNN report, they were talking about, airplanes, high flying, climate control, climate, change, and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I've heard about airplanes, it kind of ties into the contrails because they're burning fuel. Coming out of any engines, as we all know, is the dreaded CO2. Now, what I've heard and what we'll look at here is, they talk about, well, cars are killing us. Cow farts are killing us. Methane from garbage cans are killing us. They're killing the environment. They're giving all these greenhouse gases off. But don't worry about the commercial aircraft. The whole thing is, all these environmental experts are flying from country to country, telling them how bad the situation is. Then they're flying home on private jets. Oh, don't look at the man behind the curtain. Squirrel. So, as I understood it, and we'll look at it here, when people measure how much a commercial airplane is emitting, how much CO2 a commercial airplane is emitting, they look at it at two times, takeoff and landing, over the airport or a certain range of the airport. Okay, now, granted, takeoff is going to produce a lot of thrust. They're going to burn a lot of fuel in a short time, right there over the airport. I don't argue that. Landing, maybe not so much because they're cutting back on the power. They're bringing it in. Then when they land, they do the reverse thrusters. That's just a momentary, big boost of energy. So landing, not so much. But I've never seen or heard of them saying how much CO2 is emitted when they're flying at altitude. It goes along with chemtrails or contrails. Okay, so follow me on this. They're way up in the sky. where supposedly the CO2 has its worst effects, is up in the atmosphere, causing the greenhouse effect. They're flying that right in that pocket, that perfect zone, and then just dumping CO2 out of the back of these airplanes with their 4 engines or 2 engines or whatever to maintain that thing in the sky. That bad boy's got to be putting out some heat. So why don't they measure it there? Why don't they say from takeoff to landing, this is how much CO2 is emitted? Now, like I said, they're putting it right up there. Like if you were going to disperse chemicals, where's the best place to do it? Up high, so then it falls out. If you were going to disperse a lot of CO2, greenhouse effect gases, where would be the best place to do it? Not out of cow's butt, not 2 foot off the ground at a car exhaust, but 15,000 feet in the air where it's just going to spread out and it doesn't even have to rise to that level. It's already going to be there. Why don't they measure it there? If I was doing conspiracy theory in my mind, my conspiracy would be they don't want you to know. They're maybe not covering up the fact, they're just not reporting that. Oh, well, we can't really measure. Well, everything in this stupid whole sciences thing now is based on computer models. I don't trust it. Garbage in, garbage out. That's all I got to say. What's Robert talking about? He's going to pay me off. Probably not too difficult. You don't see nothing, then you know nothing. Right. They're roping down out of helicopters and smashing all of our windows in just a minute. No, I'm still here. It's just a glitch in the matrix. Don't worry. Okay, so real quick, because we've already been 46 minutes, and I've got to get down to my safe room before it really hits the fan. For the first time, aircraft data collected by commercial airlines has the potential to contribute to the monitoring of greenhouse gas emissions. So this was written, Lord, there's your telephone number. You can talk to Sarah Ronco Frakalikida, PhD. So this is 2020, okay? Well, look right there. It says May 14th, 2020. For the very first time, stand by. It's happening. Aircraft data collected by commercial airlines has the potential to contribute to the monitoring of greenhouse gas emissions, an important step in managing the mitigation of such emissions. An international research team that included universities, Space Research Association, Tomohiro Oda examined carbon dioxide data collected over 34 global cities by Japan's commercial airliners. The study published in Scientific Reports shows that for the first time, the connections between urban atmospheric CO2 variability and emissions from cities, suggesting that aircraft data collected by commercial airlines can contribute to global greenhouse gases, emissions monitoring, and their management to minimize impact on climate. You're all over Joe Rogan. Where's Joe Rogan? Let's ask. I like Rogan. Yep, I listened to his stuff the other day. Just on a side note, I was listening to Rogan's podcast this weekend, and Dr. Phil was on there. And apparently he is creating his own TV network that will have potentially over 30 channels directed basically at fact-based reporting. Robert says, oh my God. I know. But if you ever listen to Rogan, listen to that interview he does with Dr. Phil. And then right after that, there's one he does with Kid Rock. Rogan is across the board on his guests. I mean, one time he's interviewing, like I said, Dr. Phil, and the very next interview he does is with Kid Rock. Anyway, here's the important part. Using instruments on Japan Airlines, commercial airliners, the Comprehensive Observation Network for Trace Gases by Airlines, or Contrails. Well, isn't that a coincidence? Team used their unique aircraft observations to obtain high precision atmospheric CO2 measurements. Anyway, in this study, the team analyzed thousands of vertical ascending and descending measurements collected over airports to categorize CO2 emissions variations over 34 major cities worldwide for the first time. Airports are often located in the proximity of large cities to ensure convenient access. Astonishing. Based on aircraft landing and takeoffs over Narita Airport many times on a daily basis, 7,692 times in total during 2005-2006, they were able to obtain detailed atmospheric CO2 emissions for the greater Tokyo area, approximately several tens of kilometers away. They use similar approaches for other major airports nearby large urban centers globally to retrieve urban CO2 emissions. We analyzed millions of observational data collected at and around Tokyo Narita Airport and found clear CO2 enhancements when the wind comes from the greater Tokyo area. But there again, on takeoff and landing, what's happening between airports when these jets are flying at 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 30,000, however many thousands of feet they're in the air, dumping CO2, whether it has chemicals in it or not, I don't know. But they're dumping CO2 right out there in the atmosphere, and nobody wants to look at that. Because it's cow farts, gasoline engines, coal-burning furnaces, all that kind of stuff, firewood, you name it. It's all that. Forget about the things that are flying in the sky. Just forget about that. Or their doors are blowing up. It sucked the shirt off that kid. That is just crazy that he lived. That's a miracle that he wasn't sucked out of the airplane. They did research on those things. The bolts weren't even there. It wasn't like they got pulled off. Some of those ones, now maybe that one, the head's sheared off of them. But in some of the doors they inspected later, there weren't even bolts in the holes. I bet you they're built in Denver, next to the distribution dispensary up there, wherever. And the dudes are smoking weed. And they're going, hey man, you don't need but 4 out of those 10 bolts. Just put one in every other hole. I don't know. Stupid. So, is chemtrails a thing? All kinds of chemicals in the exhaust, I guarantee it. Is the government putting them there on purpose? I don't know. You decide. Do your research. Think about it. Leave me a comment. Tell me whether you think it's true. You don't think it's true. How can it be true? How can it not be true? I don't know. I just think it would take a lot of people knowing something's going on and not saying anything, or suspecting things are going on. They can't kill everybody. Well, the old saying is they can kill you, but they can't eat you. So there's evidence out there. I think that's what that means. I'm not sure if that's what that means, but I've heard it before. They can kill you, but they can't eat you. So maybe they can, knock off some of the people, but they can't get rid of the evidence. So fossil fuel is bad, okay? My South Park interpretation. Yep. I don't know. We never come up with a solid answer here. That's just because we have bigger questions than we've got brains. So we never come up. You decide. Make up your own mind. You know, are there chemicals that they're dispersing to make us crazy? Maybe. Maybe so. But I will say this, no matter what you say, whether it's just CO2 emissions or whether it's chemicals that are being sprayed, my suggestion to everybody is get as far away from large cities as possible. Don't come to Tennessee. This is a bad, bad place to live. I would go, I don't know, man, go to Texas. Go to Texas where there's lots of new people coming to the state of Texas that you can talk with and get to know. Go down there, get away, but stay out of the big cities. Go somewhere where there's, not a real fence around, and just go down there and hang out. Meet people, chat them up, figure out what's going on. Have a good time. Get out of New York, get out of LA, get out of Philadelphia, get out of Chicago. Leave those places. Because that's where the major airports are, and you're going to get the most chemtrails and or CO2. It's just a fact of life. Leave those places. Get away from that. Raise your own garden before they make that illegal. Grow a vegetable. If you do it, they can't stop everybody from growing tomatoes. Can't do it. Just can't do it. Ain't possible. So, anyway, if you watched it this far, you listened to it this long, you deserve a medal. Leave me a comment and tell me how great you are for putting up with this junk. All right, so 56 minutes with Milo show, Monday edition. If you got an idea for Thursdays, let me know. Just as a heads up, if you're interested, if you're not interested, I'm still going to say it. It's getting to be summer. It's getting to be, pretty time where you're active. Lots of things going on. It's going to stay lighter later. I may go to a summer schedule. Right now I do a Mondays and a Thursday show. Okay. I might just cut back to once a week doing a Thursday show because Thursdays are my Friday. And, it's not as, hectic. Coming home Thursday, do the show, relax, maybe sleep in a little bit on Friday morning, then get up and do my thing. But since, it's going to be lighter, later, maybe summertime. Now, last year I just pushed through and did still Mondays and Thursdays. All right. So maybe I might just cut back to a Thursday night show during the summertime so everybody can have their Mondays off and get things done. Don't know. Thinking about it. Let you know. But I appreciate it. Tell your friends. Tell your moms, your dads, your aunts, your uncles, the guy on the street. Tell you the person sitting next to you on that commercial flight. Tell them. But anyway, all right, that's it. I appreciate you, and I'm just going to hit this button twice and hope it stops.